the Joy Business Town Hall meeting, where students have the opportunity to discuss the state of our economy. So many things happening. Ghana in talks with the IMF for a possible deal. At the end of this month, we expect the presentation of the mid-year budget. What do students expect? Fuel prices going up, inflation up, cost of living going up. These are some of the things that are going to come up as the students engage this afternoon. The moderator will be Dr. Benjamin Amoah. He is a finance lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. Very soon we expect that program to start, but we want to engage students in the lead-up just to have a feel of some of the things on their minds as we continue to talk about our economy and the challenges our leaders have to grapple with at this point. How would an IMF program impact the economy? How would the current inflation rate impact the economy? What should we look ahead to going forward? We have been talking about decisions that the policymakers have to take right now to stem the tide. Hopefully, we can speak with Charles Aite, who is at the University of Ghana Business School for us. Charles, can you hear me? And what's the buzz over there as we build up to the event?
That we've come too far. We've interacted with the experts, with the ministers, with the president himself, and so many stakeholders that really hold true to Ghana's economy. But when it comes to the young people, the question we are begging is, what about them? What particular message do they have? What solutions do they have to fixing Ghana's ailing economy? And of course, the Amegashie Hall is getting full, and we're going to be kick-starting the debate for today's session. But even before that, do I have some students here with me from the UGBS? Come together, guys, for us to discuss, what the expectations are and give us some, answers to the prevailing issues pertaining to the Ghanaian economy. So I want to start with the ladies first. So first of all, this is the first time Joy Business has come over here to interact with you guys, and it's lovely so far. But what's your expectation from the town hall meeting today?
So I expect to hear from my colleagues what they think. I mean, I have my own thoughts, but it'll be nice to hear from my colleagues on what they also think on them.
Speaking of our colleagues, we even have a PhD candidate who is prepping up to give his own thoughts about the whole issue. But what about you, my lady? What's your expectation of today's town hall meeting?
Yeah, the same thing that she's expecting. We all have our own thing with what the economy is happening, but we also like to hear what someone also has to say. Is it the same as mine, or someone is in a whole different economy, different from mine? Yeah.
Now to the gentlemen. The big issue on the ground is the economy. We've spoken to so many experts. They've shared their views. We're going for an IMF program. This is the 19th time we're going for an IMF program. And for you students of business and finance, what do you think we're getting wrong when it comes to, boosting our economy and making it attractive for international investors? I want to start off with you. We're going to be having the town hall meeting. The debate will be setting up in the next 10 minutes. But what's your perspective on what's wrong with the economy as we speak?
Well, so off the top of my head, I can mention a number of things. I think the number one thing is mismanagement. Second, our economy is import-driven. I think as a whole, our preference as a country is not directed. We don't have one common goal and agenda we are working towards. So it's like everybody is doing his own thing, and because we are not united, we can't reach that level of developments that we all desire.
I see you just got out of lectures, right? The way you're dishing out the issues. But he mentioned mismanagement. He mentioned we're an import-led economy. How many of you agree to that? Show by hand how many of you disagree to what he said? The fact that we are mismanaging the economy. How many of you disagree? So you all agree to that? You all agree. Why do you agree to that?
I don't agree to why we are mismanaging the economy. I feel for a country, a developing country, more than 80% of our expenditure goes to consumption. We are not investing. So that's Ghana's economy is basically about consumption. It's not about investing, and that doesn't bode well for the future. I mean, we need to invest more, and so I feel government is making some strides, but they are missing so many key places. The public sector wage bill is so huge. Like, we have so many things that should be structurally looked at so that we can benefit for the future.
Now, these are students. These are not experts, so it just tells you how bright they are. But Daniel, speaking of solutions once again, he speaks about investment, he speaks about mismanagement. What do you think is wrong with the economy as we speak?
Yeah, so I believe very well as a country, we are having issues with our revenue mobilization and expenditure. If you look at our expenditure levels, our debt levels has risen from 65% to 80%, and this is kind of huge. And how we are mobilizing our revenue to cater for these expenses seem not to be matching. We are spending more than we are earning, and that's fundamentally and basically a problem. If you are spending more than you are an amount trooping in, then you are having deficits. And financing these deficits sometimes come with the borrowing, the huge and excess borrowings. And these borrowings lead to fiscal vulnerabilities, debt vulnerabilities, and all. So I believe this time around, the IMF program should be well structured. And after, we should have a plan as a nation as to after this IMF program, how we intend, if it's handed over to us as a nation, how we intend to manage our economy for the coming years. If it's, because this time I think it's just 3 years back to IMF, I believe as a nation it doesn't really fall well with us, considering the Russian-Ukrainian war and the COVID-19 and all the negative impacts it has set on us as a nation. So I believe at the end of the day, the discussions today should be pragmatic, void of any political biases and all. And we should look forward and be positive as a nation.
Intriguing. Thank you very much. So these are just the introductory expectations ahead of the town hall meeting. We shall be going in there shortly. We have our guests lined up. We have our students also prepped up for today's debate. Many thanks, guys, and I hope to see you, in there. So let's just take a sneak peek about what to expect in there. As I said earlier on, the students are all seated and everything is, prepped up for today's town hall meeting. You heard in the introductory speech this afternoon from our students, actually, the debate that they had, mismanagement, the fact that the economy is import-led, and the fact that we're borrowing too much. And I believe this is going to be some of the thematic areas that will resonate in today's discussion. There we have the students. Just give me a wave if you're happy to be here this afternoon. Great, great. And they're going to be part of the discussion, the debate we're going to be having this afternoon at the town hall meeting. As I said, it's the first of its kind by Joy Business. And there we have our panel. So in the next few seconds, I shall be handing over to the stage where the town hall meeting will begin proper.
All right, great stuff there from Charles Aite at the Maiden Joy Business Town Hall meeting. We expect to kickstart in a minute or two. But just to run you through the speakers for this afternoon's event, as indicated, the moderator will be Dr. Benjamin Amoah, who is a finance lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. The panelists, amongst them, Ba Ayekusi, who is a PhD finance candidate of the University of Ghana Business School. We have Irabna Asariansa, who is a Bachelor of Science Administration student. She's majoring in accounting. Bachelor of Science Accounting student Ebenezer Yeboah also on the panel. Justice Kwejo Tamanu, BA Economics and Finance on the panel as well. So the issues going to be discussed, the economy, the IMF, media budget review, and other matters concerning the economy right there at the RS Amegashie Hall in a couple of minutes. We expect the Joy Business Town Hall meeting to kickstart. But before then, you had the build-up. You had the students talk about where we are at, the state of our economy, what their expectations are from the speakers. And importantly, we are hoping that policymakers are listening in to this conversation to sort of understand the mindset of the younger generation, what they expect of them. I mean, they are the future of this country. And so whatever concerns the running of this country is important to them as well, because as we even talk about the debts in our country at this point, they are the ones in future who have to think around how to get the country out of this. And so important we hear from the younger generation as we engage them. So in a couple of minutes, the program is going to kickstart. We're going to be hearing from the students as they discuss the state of our economy. Note, this is the first time Joy Business is holding this event because we expect, as you can see, those students very important in the conversation about the current state of our economy, where we are at currently. We have had to go back to the IMF to engage in talks because of our rising debt, and because of our balance of payment problems. And we expect the IMF deal to kick in hopefully in 2023 towards the end of 2024, What do the students think about that? As you indicated, inflation is going up. We are almost hitting 29.8% as at the end of June. We expect it to go further. If you listen to the marketplace, I mean, the analysts expect it to peak to 34% by the end of the year. We've heard some of them talk about 40% by the end of the year, even 50%. What are the implications for the economy? We are linking you right now to the IRS Amegashie Hall, where the maiden edition of the Joy Business Town Hall meeting is kickstarting.
Boy, level 400 BSc accounting student from the University of Ghana Business School, and I'm hoping to also have a fruitful discussion, as my colleagues made mention of, and share ideas so that the government can also pick these ideas and make our country better. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Ba Kusi, a PhD finance student with the finance department. I'm expecting a very fruitful discussion. I'm hoping that what ideas we share here can help us influence the policy that the government will want to adapt going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We could do it better. We could do it better. So for the purposes of introduction, I'm Charles Ayete. I'm a business journalist with the Multimedia Group. And to kickstart events proper, it's my humble honor to invite for the opening statement, the keynote address, the Dean of the University of Ghana Business School, Professor Justice Bawole. Please give it up to him as he comes.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. This is really exciting because, as the team from Joy FM says, this is the very first time town hall meeting in a university. For us in the University of Ghana, this is also our very first. And I'm excited that this is happening in the Premier Business School, a school where we train great minds. So I actually want to welcome you on behalf of my management to this Amegashie Auditorium and to this important conversation. I'm sure that we all know that Africa is a youthful continent, the youngest continent. In other words, the continent that has more young people than old people. It is also an analogy and sometimes a contradiction that we have a continent that has a lot of young people being led always by older folks. In continents where they have, older generations, young people are leading. But in Africa, we have young people and old people are leading. And I'm sure that those of us who have gathered here today should be contributing to changing that discourse. And if we can contribute to change that discourse, it means that we actually have to be upfront in wanting to participate in the discourse for national development. And that's why I'm excited that I have quite a number of students here and also a lineup of our own students to take on the conversations of national development. A town hall meeting that seeks to discuss the economy is an important one. It is important because for all of us, we are affected in one way or the other. It is also important because in the preponderance of views, we find wisdom. And the youth are those that have them, those preponderance of ideas, those radical ideas, those ideas that we have not been fed with many years ago, and which I think should be coming from here, makes it extremely important that people who have those ideas would bring them forth. So my expectation is that we're going to have a very engaging conversation. I hope that these conversations would shape national discourse and we shape policy. And that at the end, we would be able to see what young people can bring up for consideration by the older generation. As a school, we are excited that our partnership with Joy FM has brought us today to this, and we hope that we're going to be having a lot more of such conversations. But if I were to have my own bite at it, the issue of the economy, it looks to me that we are deep-necked into the crisis that the country currently has that has led us to the IMF. Oftentimes we have pointed fingers to who is responsible, but I think that at the end of the day, we are in it together, and so everyone has a role to play. And that role should not just be the conversations that we're going to have today, but that young people would take responsibilities, including responsibilities of wanting to contribute, not only in talking, but also in working hard and coming up with ideas and coming up with suggestions, coming up with new items and innovations that can drive the development of this country. After all, we are those that have the most of energies to be able to contribute. So let me wish all of you well in these conversations, especially the panelists, and hope that the conversations would be exciting and engaging. I'm going to sit back and enjoy it also. But welcome to the business school, the premier business school. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. As I've already announced, this is live on Joy News. This is a maiden edition of the Joy Business Town Hall meeting. At this juncture, we're going to be starting the debate proper. And he is a refined mind that really breaks down economic issues whenever we call on him to analyze development on television. I'm talking of no other person than Dr. Benjamin Amoah, Senior Lecturer, Department of Finance here at the University of Ghana Business School. And we are pleased to have him as our moderator for today's event. So I'm going to hand over to you, Doctor, as we give him a round of applause to begin the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles, for the privilege and opportunity to anchor the Maiden Joy Business Town Hall meeting. It is indeed a privilege to lead the discussion from this wonderful panelists that we have here. We've heard a lot about economy. We've heard from political parties. We've heard from managers of the economy. But like Charles said earlier on, when it comes to the youth, we have directly or indirectly not giving them the needed attention to tell us what they think and their aspirations as far as the economy is concerned. But today, on the multimedia platform, to be specific, Joy News, and in collaboration with the University of Ghana Business School, we have the privilege to give the microphones and the camera to the youth of today who will in the near future take over the management of the Ghanaian economy. So like we said, we are looking at business and economic issues. And we believe that by the time we end this program, we'll go back educated, informed, and entertained as well. The economy, as we know, provides the physical and the non-physical domain that businesses thrives on and then use to create value and to employ many of us. In other words, if the economy itself is not well functioning, then individuals who work within the economies will have their life being and their world be negatively impacted. We have seen and experienced the Ghanaian economy in the past. We continue to experience the Ghanaian economy today, and will continue to hear the economy about the economy in the near future. I would like to ask, beginning from you, Ba, which one aspect of the Ghanaian economy that concerns you most, and why you are so much concerned about this one particular aspect of the Ghanaian economy? Ba?
Thank you, Dr. Amoah. Coming from a finance background, I think it's basically about the expenditure and revenue generation of government. And this is what interests me most, because for government to be able to do any activity, it depends on how it's able to generate revenue, and then how efficiently that revenue generated is spent on productive sectors or ventures within the economy. Current or figures on our tax to GDP, which forms a major part of our revenue as government. Currently, Ghana is around 13.5%. That is for an average for the past 5 years, around 13.5%. In sub-Saharan Africa or in Africa, we realize the average for African countries is around 16.6%. By implication, it means that we are below the average for Africa, which tells us that our revenue generation is low. And I'm sure that has what actually influenced the implementation of this e-levy, just to shore up or increase the revenue levels within the country. However, that also has its own challenges, which I think was largely avoidable, but one or two things happened and then it was implemented. Here again, we also look at on the other side, which is the expenditure side, and we realize that from Auditor General reports that we've read over the years, we see a lot of mismanagement, a lot of monies being dispersed wrongly, not going to the right channels, and over $1 billion and all that's being reported. In fact, figures currently show that Ghana loses about 5 billion Ghana cedis through tax incentives and tax evasion, which means that if we are able to put in the proper mechanisms, make sure that people don't invade our tax system, make sure that these incentives given to these multinationals are reduced, we can actually raise some revenue that can shore us up, give us more aptitude to be able to operate within larger margins of tax revenues. Again, we can also look at it from this perspective where we see a lot of mismanagement and then we are not pursuing or prosecuting those who actually lead these mismanagement practices. There have been a few auditor generals who have been able to pursue people for them to pay back certain monies. And I believe that if that position is not politicized and people who are competent enough are appointed into those areas, then people will pursue individuals who engage in such practices to be able to retrieve their money. But as it stands now, we realize that most of these appointments are politically motivated. And so when they come in and they see some of these, they're unable to pursue and prosecute and retrieve the monies that is lawfully due the country. And so I think that if we are able to put in mechanisms of trying to get the right people in place in position, trying to implement some more avenues so we can get revenue like the property tax rate, which does not flow into the tax stream of the government. These are things that I think we can put in place to make sure that we shore up our revenues and make sure that our expenditures are on the minimal. And the one thing I feel to touch on the expenditure side is about the size of governments we have over the years. And I think that if this is cut down, and the almighty Amegashie is cut down, then I think we can make a headway and then cut down our expenditures, and then we have a good fiscal space to operate in as a country.
Yeah, thank you very much. Van spoke about the fiscal space and the need for us to manage our resources and be more prudent in our resource management as a country. He talked about tax evasion. He talked about the fact that we have not been good at increasing our tax revenue. And for that matter, we need to put in place measures and strategies to do that. Ebenezer, what is your take on one thing that bothers you most about the Ghanaian economy?
Thank you very much, Doc. One major thing or one major concern is the debt crisis in our economy. Doc, in March, we recorded or reported that we have about 391 billion Ghana cedis of debt stock. And in fact, if you check from March to this date, the cedi has really depreciated against the dollar. And, you know, when the cedi depreciates, you should know that your debt stock will definitely increase. And, in fact, I can boldly say that we have a debt stock of over 400 billion Ghana cedis as at now.
Wow.
Considering the fact that the cedi has depreciated. And we are not able to manage our debt stock very well. In fact, if you check our budget for 2022, you realize that debt sustainability, that's the amount we are spending on servicing our debt, is the highest expenditure item on our debt stock. Then we'll move on to probably the salaries of people in the government sectors and the rest. So, in fact, the debt in the country is really a problem to our economy, and it has even affected our ratings a lot, meaning that no one is ready to give us loans or is ready to invest in our economy, and it's really bad.
Okay, so for you, the issue of debt and sustainability is one issue that must be confronted and be dealt with. You link that up with the issue of the cedi depreciation, and the risk here and the exposure is that the weaker our currency becomes, the more exposed we are in terms of debt sustainability. We have only one lady panelist here, the person of Irabna. So Irabna, you've heard Ba talking about the need for us to be efficient in terms of resources. Ebenezer talked about debt sustainability. Which one will you go for?
Okay, so development in Ghana's economy can be categorized into four sectors, four macroeconomic sectors. We have the real sector, the government sector, the external sector, and the monetary sector. Out of this, the one that concerns me the most is the government sector, because here is where the fiscal policy is determined, and here is where we have issues of taxation, that is revenue mobilization, and also the e-levy. And here is where we also have allocation of expenditure and financing our budget deficits. So taking a look at our budget deficits, you realize that it's very high as a result of the government continuously adding up to the already existing public debt stock of 387.9 billion, which is 77.2% of our GDP. And so our debt is classified as highly risky and unsustainable. Unsustainable because the loans that we go for, we are unable to put them into profitable ventures to generate revenue for us to repay the loans. They rather go into consumables. Taking a look at our tax to GDP ratio, it's around 11.8% as at 2022 ending. And if you compare it to that of our peer countries, it lies between 16% to 18%. And this is a clear indication that we as a country are unable to produce resources to fund our expenditure. And so we go about borrowing again to add up to our already existing public debt stock. Taking a look at our expenditure, you realize that they are very high and rigid because of three major items. First of all is the statutory payments that we have to pay, the GET fund and the SNITs, and also the compulsory payments that we have to make for public sector employees. And thirdly, the interest payments on the loans that we get. But when you look at the budget that was read in November 2021, you realize that the government tried to increase our tax to GDP ratio by introducing certain programs such as the electronic levy. And clearly in the news, you hear that they are saying that the electronic levy isn't really performing. It's underperforming because there was projection that we'll get about 500 million a month. But as of now, we are getting under that. And so our expenditures are increasing and our revenue is decreasing. How do we solve these issues? By coming up with reforms to close up the revenue loopholes in our systems, by having tax education, educating the public on why they should pay taxes, by implementing the earmarked capping Realignment Act 2017 that states that statutory payments should not exceed 25% of our tax revenue. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Justice, you have the last one on this.
So the issue I find most concerning in the economy is inflation. Well, inflation and interest rates, but especially inflation. I believe of all the difficulties we are facing as a country right now, inflation is the one that hits closest to home. That's what we face when we leave the house every day. The most recent report by the Bank of Ghana places our inflation rate for June 2022 at 29.8%. This is a steep increase from where we stood 1 year ago at 7.8%. I understand that most of this increase is due to the ongoing war in Russia and Ukraine, which has increased the cost of key imports like wheat, petroleum products, and natural gas. In May, we recorded an inflation for imported goods of 28.2%. What this has done is that it has increased the cost or price of raw materials, which in turn has also affected the cost of production, which has affected the price of goods and services. Now, I understand that as a country, we have little or no influence over how the war progresses or how it ends. Okay. But that doesn't mean that we should just sit down and let it affect us without reacting to it. So, in view of that, the government hiked the MPC, the monetary policy rate, by 200 basis points in May. Now it's 19%. What it does is that it keeps capital in the country. But I believe that when it comes to tackling the inflation, the 200 basis points hike doesn't really do much. Why am I saying this? Unlike other countries in the world right now, Ghana is facing a predominantly cost-push inflation as against a demand-pull inflation. This means that the increase in the price of goods and services are mostly caused by what? The increase in the cost of production. It's like a domino effect. There's the war. The war causes increase in raw materials. The increase in the price of raw materials causes increase in cost of production, which in turn affects the price of goods and services. It reduces the purchasing power of citizens of the country, and now people are agitating. I'm sure we're all aware that last week the labor unions went on strike because they were agitating for better pay and better terms of service. We can't blame them because things are hard right now. The government has made an agreement with them. If the inflation rate continues to reach the way it is, it's only a matter of time before they come back to ask for better conditions because it's not their fault. We are really going through it as a country right now. Yeah. What I believe the country can do, in addition to fiscal policy adjustments, is that we can consider supply-side policies. Now that we've identified that, it's cost-push inflation that we are facing, we can find out that what goods are driving the inflation rates of both food items and non-food items. In June 2022, the inflation rate for food items was 30.7% as compared to May when it was 30.1%. For non-food items, it was 29.1% as compared to 25.7% in May. What food items are driving the month-over-month increase in inflation? Is it bread? Is it gobe? We don't know, but we have to find out as a country and know that, we know that A, B, and C was causing inflation. And the government implements subsidies, tries to reduce the cost of production for these goods. What this does is that we are stemming the tide from the source of the problem. We cannot control the war, but after the war, what's the next domino? The cost or the price of raw materials. We subsidize those. Now it results in a decrease in cost of production. Decrease in cost of production results in the decrease in the price of goods and services. And now we can buy it without having to agitate for better terms of service from the government. Everybody is happy, inflation is alleviated, and then citizens of the country can enjoy a better quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've heard from...
Hello, Doug.
You want to...
Yes, so the irony of what we just spoke about, the fact that we have inflation being around 29.8, but T-bill rate is around 21.
Okay.
Meaning that even if you buy T-bill rates, you are not even able to make up for the devaluation of the city.
Exactly.
Which is quite bad and doesn't even actually follow the normal finance principles that we are being taught. So there's something structurally wrong with the economy which we need to actually solve to be able to come back to some of this. Because usually these theories and concepts operate when the level is leveled. And they won't apply and not make sense in our context if we have certain structural deficiencies within the system.
Okay. You want to ask something, Eben?
Maybe we'll hear some good news from the MPC, that's the Monetary Policy Committee, maybe next week, considering the fact that they'll be having a meeting this week. So maybe let's expect the MP rate to probably 30% or something, so that I think it will cover up the inflation.
Yeah, 30% will mean that it's going to cost a lot to borrow. And from what Justice said, once that happens, producers will then be forced to pass on the borrowing. That is, if they cannot absorb it into their prices, and that will also be leading to what he mentioned in terms of the inflation. So yes, we are expecting some changes, but then the variables that, like Mas said, influences the economy are sometimes not easy to control in the practical sense. The all things being equal assumption works, but then when you throw it into practice, you realize that economic agents also react. And when they react, sometimes you don't get the needed effect and reactions that you anticipated when you're introducing the policy. Justice, your last word on this.
I'd like to add that the reason why the central bank is increasing the monetary policy rate is that it's in response to hikes by the central banks of other more developed countries like the US. The Fed has increased its rate by 450 basis points since the beginning of the year. What this does is that it makes or increases the rate of return on their debt instruments. And we know that the debt on the US are generally the safest in the world. So the monetary policy rate increase, is done to keep investors in the country. Because if you are an investor and then you see that, you are getting maybe 90% rate of return from Ghana, but there's a lot of risk. And even if you are getting maybe 9.1% from the US, but with significantly less risk, you are going to go to the US. So with that regard, I believe that the increase in the monetary policy rate is achieving what it's set out to do to some extent. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We are coming to you live from the University of Ghana Business School, and this is in collaboration with the Joy News and University of Ghana Business School. We are also live on Joy social media handles and on the UGBS Facebook page. Our next question will be on the mid-year budget review. Here we seek to find out from our panelists what their expectations are going forward in regard to the mid-year budget review that in the next few days will be presented to Parliament. Irabna, what are your expectations from the mid-year review that we are all expecting in about some few days from now?
Okay, so on the revenue side, I expect to see that the revenue would be reviewed because as we have seen or as we have heard, the e-levy is underperforming. So I expect that side to be reviewed. On the expenditure side, last week, Thursday, we heard that government had concluded negotiations with the organized labor to pay them 15% of their basic salary as COLA, that is cost of living allowance. So I expect that there will be an increase in the expenditure part of the budgets. On the other hand, too, you realize that our exchange rate keeps increasing since the beginning of the year. It has really depreciated. And so I expect that exchange rates, items, or expenditures such as the external interest payments would also increase. And that will also increase our expenditure. So all things being equal, I expect our revenues to decrease whilst our expenditures increase in the budgets. And this will in turn increase the budget deficit that the government has to pay. And I don't know how we would go about this if we are going to increase taxes or introduce more taxes. But yeah.
Okay. So when you said e-levy should be reviewed, what do you mean by it should be reviewed? What do you have in mind?
Okay. So the e-levy is 1.5%. Yeah. And clearly the ordinary Ghanaian is unwilling to pay that amount to governments because the ordinary Ghanaian doesn't understand why they should pay that money. So if there's enough public education as to why you need to pay taxes, and also if that rate can be reduced, and there are also exemptions on the e-levy such that you have to pay 100 cedis and then the e-levy is taxed on it. So maybe if that exemption is taken off, it could increase the amount of revenue that we get from the e-levy.
Okay, so you are talking about reducing the rate and then also the exemption being taken off. Justice.
Okay, so with the government decision to return to the IMF still fresh on the minds of economic agents, spectators, stakeholders, and commentators, I expect that much of the media budget review will be centered around giving clarity to that decision. We need to understand why are we going to the IMF, because at the beginning of the year, we were insisting that, we are not going to go. We need facts and figures. I mean, the Ministry of Finance has offered broad reasons as to why we are going, but by how much are we in a deficit right now? By how much has our revenue fallen as compared to our targets at the beginning of the year? By how much has our expenditure risen? We need these numbers to help paint a clear picture as to why we are going and what to expect from the IMF. I also expect that since the revenue and expenditure measures have not reached their targets, the government will implement additional ones. The target at the beginning of the year was for a revenue of 100.52 million Ghana cedis. As at the end of the first quarter, we were at 16.71 million, which is below the 25% rate that they were expecting. So I'm expecting that, as a show of good faith to the IMF, they want to show the IMF that, they indeed are serious about turning the economy around. So they should implement additional measures towards increased revenue, reduce expenditure to achieve fiscal consolidation. I also expect an update on the e-levy. At the beginning of the year, there was a national debate. We were all saying, some people were saying go to the IMF, others were saying e-levy, and the government is still on the e-levy. A few months down the line, we've turned to the IMF. What does this mean for the e-levy? I believe that the e-levy is failing to reach its target of 4.5 billion Ghana cedis right now because there's a structural problem with the way it is right now, the form it's in right now. What I expect the government to do is that they should modify it. Modify it in what way, you may ask. I believe that the 1.5% rate should be reduced to 0.5% for transactions
reduced to
0.5%. Yeah, on transactions of 100 Ghana cedis and above. And the charge of 1.25% should be placed on transactions of much higher value, say 20,000 cedis and above. What this does is that it will convert the e-levy from a proportional tax to a progressive tax, where the not so ordinary Ghanaians, the rich Ghanaians, pay more compared to what the ordinary Ghanaians, because ordinary Ghanaians, most of the money that we receive is what for housing and then basic living expenses. So what is that? Is that it's the rich are going to pay more because they can afford to pay more. You understand? And then this would make it what one, accrue more revenue, two, rejuvenate the fintech sector, because when the e-levy was passed, we all know that people stopped using more, people started cashing out, people started working to go and send money to their friends and family. So if this is done, the people who were paying 1.5% are now paying 0.5%. Yep. Even those who are paying 1.5% for transactions of high value are now paying 1.25%, which is significantly less for that amount of money. So it rejuvenate the fintech sector. And we all know that in this current age of fintech innovation, fintech is an instrument for positive economic growth. And I'm also expecting that, according to estimate from the government, the government has heard our cries. We are begging them that, things are hard. They should relax for us more, you understand? So I'm expecting that they should implement some relief measures to cushion the plight of Ghanaians right now. An example would be a social intervention of subsidizing the cost of goods that I mentioned earlier that they are driving inflation. So these are some of the things I'm expecting from the media budget review.
You are calling for a very good media review that softens the economy for the average Ghanaian. E-levy should reduce from 1.5 to 0.5. Then again, for transactions above 20,000, you are saying that we should increase e-levy to 1.25, right? So that it becomes a progressive tax and not a current proportional tax. We are also calling for some additional reviews and reliefs that will help us all. These are interesting points that you have. Ebenezer, you've heard Irabena and then Justice. What would you expect from the upcoming mid-year budget review?
Thank you, Doc. In fact, I appreciate the fact that the mid-year budget review was actually postponed, because a decision from the IMF would definitely affect the mid-year budget review. And I earlier predicted, in fact, with Charles at Joy News, that considering e-levy and the IMF, we should have gone to the IMF long ago, because considering the accounting concept, which is the prudence concept, I think I wouldn't anticipate to make so much money when I think there's another option. You're anticipating that, yes, the citizens will pay the e-levy so that you'll be able to work for them. But why should you anticipate when you don't have any proof or any grounds to stand on that, yes, the citizens are going to pay? So the best alternative should have been the IMF long ago, about some months ago. But, I think maybe due to political reasons, they wouldn't prefer to do that, but rather outsource from maybe the citizens of the country to generate some monies to help the economy. But my expectation from the mid-year budget review is that there will be maybe the tax exemptions in the economy, some will be cut off. There are certain tax exemptions we shouldn't appreciate at all, so that we can generate more taxes. As he earlier said, I think the 100 cedis is even a form of tax exemption. Yeah. When we consider a lower rate for that level, I think we will still, because people are now sending, if I owe you 500 cedis, I want to send 100 cedis every day till I finish paying your debt. And majority of us are doing that. And now, instead of you transferring money, I prefer depositing, because when I deposit it, I think there is no charge. So I think there should be a reform. Understanding, I think we've started the implementation some weeks or some months ago. So collecting data for maybe the citizens of the economy about how they are trying to evade the tax, we'll be able to know what we should do next. So I think certain tax exemptions should be cut off, or at least there should be a low rate for them to pay, so that it will contribute to the tax revenue we collect in the country.
Yeah. But you will come in next, that will change the focus of the discussion.
So basically what I would want us to focus on, following from the concept of account of prudence, I think that what we have control over is the expenditure rather than the income generation. So I would want government to focus more on cutting down expenditure. Okay. Because revenues are anticipated, but when you generate, that's when you spend. So if you have lower expectations or lower spending patterns, then you can manage the revenue that comes in very well. I think that one thing that we should be looking at when it comes to this expenditure is the size of government, which I've mentioned already. it's really a big issue when it comes to presidential staffers and all that. Not just this current government in government, that has been the trend.
Yeah, but not to cut you, do you have an idea of what an ideal size of government would be for a country like Ghana?
Well, I know a friend who is doing that for his PhD, but the point is that when you compare Ghana to our peers, when a country with less than 3.2, 30 million people, 31 million people, and our ministerial positions, it's too much.
Okay,
it's too much when you compare it to South Africa and other places. It's just too much. We have to just come down to it. And recently I heard the majority leader saying it should be 19. 19, we should cut down. All this while, we've been in parliament for how many years? Okay. And all this while, at this point, sometimes we might get emotional about it. That's it. But we have to actually look at cutting down the numbers of our ministers and all that. And then secondly, when it comes to the E-levy implementation, and I've said this and I'll say it again, look, we are all rational human beings. As much as possible, we want to avoid taxes. The best is for government to lower the rates of the tax and rather increase the exemption. You can increase about 400 cities, 500 cities, and then lower the tax, the percentage. It's about 1%, 2%. People don't feel it when they are paying. But when it's too high, I'm saying about 100 Ghana cedis, or let's say 1,000 Ghana cedis, and the amount I'll pay as charge, I can buy go before 2 days.
Exactly.
I would say I'd rather take the money and go and deposit the amount in the person's account. But it should be something that we don't feel. The moment we feel it, we won't pay. So I think the government should be able to reduce the e-levy charge and also increase the exemption, so that at least the poor are shielded from that rate.
Okay, so again, the e-levy is a big problem, and from our panelists, they strongly believe that the current 1.5% on transactions in excess of 100 Ghana cedis is problematic. If we really, really want to get enough in terms of revenue from the e-levy, then what we are hearing this afternoon is that government take a relook, and then if you can, reduce the rate, then chances are that you can get a lot more individuals coming back to use electronic transactions. You want to say something?
Yep. I didn't really talk about the expenditure aspect of the economy. You know, recently we heard that the Minister of Finance announced that about 30% of the salaries of certain persons in the government sector has been reduced, but has been cut off, and I think some fuel coupons percentage. So I was wondering, so all these things could have been done in the previous years, but we waited for this period, and that's mismanagement. In fact, these people could have still hold their meetings and everything will be fine. But we intend giving them, waiting for the bad days before we do all these things. So I believe that, I think there are still more things we could do, or more expenditure items we could cut off. That I think there should be probably a committee that will be set up. In fact, I'm even afraid for this committee that will be set up, because the amounts they will even spend. But considering that maybe a committee of inquiry being set up, they find out, okay, which other expenditure item can be cut off? Which other thing can we at least reduce, so that we can still reduce our expenditure? So I think maybe when such things are done...
Please, not cutting you. I think that in the era of presidents, the late Amoah, there were some constitutional reviews that was done. Then he couldn't implement it. Then, may he so rest in peace, he passed on. Ex-presidents took over. Now we have President Akufo-Addo coming. One of the key things was thinking through about Amegashie payments. And government in, government out, they've all come, go, nobody seems to implement it. You see, it's high time we understand as Ghanaians that Economics 101, we are all maximizing our interests. So as soon as they assume the position of being in power, they will maximize their interest. And when it came to further that they have to cut down parliamentary salary, they said no, they won't allow. Because they think they deserve it. Look, and our sister mentioned something, that there are certain statutory payments that you're supposed to do. What gives them that right is the Constitution. So the bedrock on which these things run should be looked at, which is the Constitution. If you want these things changed, these payments will come down. This Amegashie should go down or should be scrapped. It is going back to the constitution.
Are you saying people should not be rewarded for their efforts?
We are not
saying, for the work they do?
No, the average Ghanaian is taking how much for his work done? That should be the conversation.
He's being paid for the value he has created. So the value he has created is what he's being paid for.
I don't think so, because if you look at their claims and why they should pay them, they'll go for funerals, they'll go for adorers, they'll go for this. Look, you see, the point is that other professions also do other things, but they don't push them on us. For instance, they say that their job is not permanent. After every 4 years, they do. But you are aware, you're a lecturer and you are aware that after every 6 you go for renewal of your appointment.
Yeah.
Are you paid Amegashie for that?
No.
No.
Yeah.
You go for it, and then if the people think you are competent and you have performed enough, they redeem you and then they bring you back. Okay. So if you're a politician, after every 4 years, you have to go back to the people and negotiate and then see whether you're coming back to power and not. And we have to bear the consequence of you exiting because you've not performed. People say they don't like you. I think it's not fair.
Okay. So from what I'm hearing, you are saying that, what about if we give them performance benchmarks, where we have performance benchmarks for each of these office holders? If you are able to do A, B, C, D, then we can reward you. But then if at the end of the day we say that, no, you are not successful at doing that, then of course, like we are saying, we just say bye-bye to them and then a new set.
That is another approach we can go. Okay. But the point is that during their tenure of the 4 years, we pay them.
Exactly.
We pay them.
Sure.
They pay Senate. They do everything.
Exactly.
Yes, so why the Amegashie?
Okay.
You are being paid. Everything that you are being paid. They take huge allowance and all that. They get their V8, and we even end up paying about 60% of that amount for them. Yeah. Look, those who have been there for 5 times, 6 times, 30 years, look at the number of V8 they've taken.
So no Amegashie.
No Amegashie. Okay. And even I was also realizing this weekend that, look, to fill the V8 is almost like 2,000 Ghana cedis.
Wow.
To fill the V8 is like 2,000 Ghana cedis. And I was told that they fill it a week. So every week, 2,000 Ghana cedis. Multiply that by a month.
8,000.
That's 8,000.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
So you realize that there are a lot of inefficiencies. They should cap some of these things. If you are going to work, you go to work. They give it. Look, we can cut a lot of things. But just that those who implement it are the same people that will go against, so they are not willing to do it. That's the problem.
So this is basically the agency problem in governance that you are trying to put across, that there's so much excess because those who get the perks are not those who are really, really paying for the perks. So there's the potential for people to take advantage of the system and to enrich themselves. This is the Joy Business UGBS Townhall Business Meeting. We are coming to you live on Joy News and then also on the social media handles of Joy FM. Don't forget that we are also live on UGBS Facebook page, and you can join us.
Doc,
yep.
I think another way to cut down expenditure is to have an audit on the wage bill, because there are lots of ghost employees. So if we have an audit, we can take away all those ghost employees, and then the salaries go to the right people.
Yeah, no, ghosts are difficult to exercise, I must confess. If the thing is spiritual, they will just move, and then in no time they will come back again. So no wonder we are having problem with dealing with ghosts. But the point is clear. Let's audit the wage bill and then see who and who is in there, who must not be in there. Maybe what we can do by way of solution is to have a system in place where within the month, right, just like we have the verification system, every worker will have to go to a particular office within his or her establishment to go and just point or put his fingers on that thing to show that he's alive and he's not a ghost. If we do that and we have a system behind that can pick that data, then the controller can use that confirmed fingerprint to effect payment. If not, we are dealing with spirits, they will always be alive. You take 20,000 out, 20,000, they will come back again. And like the Bible says, if you clear the house with 7 deadly spirits, if it is clean, you are going to have multiples of them. No wonder we are struggling in this manner. Okay, so what we are going to do next is basically to give you the opportunity to tell us, we said we'll not go to IMF, like Justice said, back and forth, we'll not go. But finally, we had no option that we go to the IMF. IMF come with conditionalities. First meeting has taken place. I believe that both parties are reviewing what has taken place. And the government has a domestic package to present to the IMF. And it is from this domestic package that the IMF will then apply its conditionalities to. Look, if you are in that particular negotiation team, what one thing will you insist on that for this particular issue, it should be a no-go area as far as the negotiations are concerned? Any of you can pick it up and then respond to it.
Doc, I'll start with that one. With the IMF negotiation, issues of the National Health Insurance Scheme is one thing I wouldn't want the IMF to, in fact, touch on.
National Health?
Yes, National Health Insurance Scheme. You know, they always say that the health of the country is the wealth of a country. So, in fact, yes, we can argue that the National Health Insurance Scheme doesn't cover so many things as we expect. But at least the little things it covers is enough. There are certain diseases and certain infections that the National Health Insurance Scheme covers. And I think, you know, when we are considering the health of the persons in the economy who are going to work, I think it should be the priority. So I think issues about the National Health Insurance Scheme shouldn't be touched at all.
Okay, so National Health, any other one? Okay, Justice.
So I believe that the IMF should not touch education.
They should not touch anything on education?
Yeah, free SHS especially. Okay. Because if you are going to look at the PDFs, the blueprints of what a developed nation, education of the youth is the bedrock. Okay. So it's from there that we develop. We are in the fast-paced, fast-changing world. We need to equip our youth with what? The skills, knowledge that they need to attack these problems or solve or bring about solutions to these things. That being said, however, I believe that if push comes to shove, right, the free SHS in its current form may not fly because it's too much of a burden on the government. Okay. What can we do about this? First, I think that to reduce the burden on the government, there should be an allowance or an exemption such that if you can pay for your wards fees, pay. Those who cannot pay, then even for that one, Krampuno, it's like on students who are...
Okay. Go on.
Because as harsh as it may sound, it's an investment. The government is investing in the youth because we are expecting returns in future. So after those who can pay for their awards are paid, I believe that the fund, right, should focus or give priority to students who are needy but brilliant.
Okay, so it's about health, it's about education. Rabna, you want to say something?
Yes, please.
Okay. I think after here we are going to have question and answer. So if you have your questions, please jot them down. I'll give you the opportunity. You can ask any of the panelists, and I believe they are well prepared and well posed to respond to the questions for you. Rabna?
Okay, so Justice mentioned free SHS, and we have the Ghana card, which has the database of every Ghanaian. So I'm thinking that the government could sort of use the Ghana card to trace low-income earning families, because we have the database, okay, and then put those people on government scholarships so that the free SHS is still there, but then IMF introduces such conditionalities for the low-income earning families to benefit from it, and then those who can pay their fees, pay their fees.
Okay, so those who can pay, review it, and then make sure that those who can pay, and then those who are poor, they are catered for and supported by the state. Question and answer. Do you have microphones? I think we have microphones around there. I think. Okay, yeah, so ask me.
I think that first, and before you even move to what I think they should protect, I think that we should involve the opposition in the negotiation.
What negotiation? The IMF negotiation?
Yes, I think they should be part. You see, we've come to a time where, or we should go beyond the time where it should be winner takes all.
Okay.
This, whatever they're going into now, it's not just at the moment. Yeah. It goes beyond just today.
Exactly.
And they have to be previewed to whatever is going on, so that if there are any ideas on the other side, we can have them being part of what the discussion that we have now. So that they can't come back to power and tell us that, oh, we are not privy to it. Okay. So at least there should be that thing that they should be included. One thing that I think that we should protect is employment.
Employment.
They shouldn't freeze the public sector employment.
Okay. Yeah, these are very, very difficult areas for, I think, the managers of the economy, but I believe that is what they have been tasked to do. So like you said, education, health, employment, these are areas that you strongly believe that should be protected. There should be a strong hedge around so that when the conditionalities are being pulled out, at least these ones will be protected. It is time for a question. So we are throwing it out to the audience. If you have a question, just show your hand. The microphone will come to you, and then you can reach out.
So if you have a question, please raise your hand so I could pass the microphone over to you. You have any questions? Okay, we have a gentleman in front of us who would want to pose a question.
Thank you very much. Mine, I don't know whether contributions are allowed.
Yeah, contributions are. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Abel, and MPhil Economics. I want to touch a bit on the revenue.
Revenue.
Which has to do with, we've spoken about e-levy, so I just want to, my own contribution on how we can review the e-levy. I believe that now we've seen the implementation of e-levy, and it's nothing more than a tax, a consumption tax.
Consumption tax.
Yes, and so if we fail to rightly identify what type of tax it is, then that is where the problem is. The issues with whether the rates are higher and or what have you is because we fail to rightly identify the type of tax that we're dealing with. If it's a consumption tax, then if I buy a shirt, for example, for 100 cedis in a boutique, and I pay for it with e-levy, the value of the shirt, which is 100 Ghana cedis, is not the same as the value of the platform with which I pay the e-levy. Exactly. In other words, I bought a shirt for 100 cedis, which may attract the VAT of 19%. Then the platform which I use, which is the e-levy platform or the Momo platform, what have you, is another service which will attract the same tax of a VAT of 19%. So whatever it is that is a rate that the telecos charges, if the telecos charges even up to 3% as the transaction fee for the platform that I use, on that transaction fee is what should attract whatever it is that they call e-levy or whatever tax that they have. Other than that, charging about 1.5% or whatever it is that we charge at the moment is too high. And if you look at our neighbors, the neighboring countries, Ivory Coast and all that, the tax, the e-levy that they charge on the transaction fee is just about 0.5%. So that is how the review should go. It's a simple consumption tax. It should attract a VAT. It can attract the same VAT that we have. Only that it should be on the value of the transaction fee that the telecos charges.
Thank you very much. The contribution is that the e-levy should be on the value of the transaction because it is a consumption tax. The next person who wants to ask a question or probably contribute.
Yep. Let's kindly keep it brief. So
Please, mine is not a question, but rather a contribution. So with the economic management team, I think there should be a reform for the fact that they insisted that we should either go for the e-levy or go to the IMF, and rather they chose e-levy over the IMF. Okay. And right now, they implemented the e-levy, and later they are now running to the IMF. So they are not effective in their decision-making. So Bawumia and his team should be put under recheck. Thank you.
So you are calling for a recomposition of the economic management team?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Well, the finance minister says he's not resigning, so.
All right, thank you. I'm Abraham Otichwam, a BSc admin student. I have a contribution to make, and that is on the e-levy.
Okay.
With the e-levy, I think from what Mr. Justice said, it has a lot of loopholes that has to be reconsidered. Because for the fact that there's this saying that you can't prevent tax, but you can avoid tax. I don't know if I'm getting it right.
Okay.
So if someone is about to maybe send 1,000 Ghana cedis to a friend that has to be sending it in, let's say, 10 days just to avoid e-levy, then implementing 0.5% on that lower income earner and the 1.5% on that person who earns more should be something we should consider, or it should be an important thing to do. So that is my contribution. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the opportunity. Okay, I'm Aji Portia, reading Human Resource Management. So I think that mine is a contribution though. So one problem I have realized is that petrol is really taking over everything, in the sense that once they increase the price of petrol, everything in the country increases. And I know you know that is what is going on. Because, honestly, today I even fought with the maid. How can you charge me 3 cedis from Atomic to Legon First? Which is like, honest, and you charge the same fare from Medina to Legon First, 3 cedis. And you charge me from Atomic to Legon First, 3 cedis. And I think that should be reviewed, because when government says they have increased petrol by 2, hours in a day, and then my wage rate is very low, comparing it to someone who is working in parliament. And then at the end of the day, they have allowances. You have petrol, like everything, almost everything, like everything, your expenditure is even being catered for again. And then at the end of the day, I will pay you. Like you are being paid for coming into parliament. And then we, the low income earners, are suffering. And you are still giving us taxes to pay. Like, I think that it should be reviewed. The expenditure should be cut off. Like,
Doc, I think she also needs a refund of her transport. Any other person who would want to contribute? All right, let's keep it brief so that we could all have.
I'm Donko Philip, a BSc administration student. My contribution is that the abolition of the road tolls was too harsh, in a sense that we are trying to increase the revenue generation, and then you abolish these road tolls. These road tolls have been there for years, and then it has become part and parcel of us. Yeah. So the people are not willing, they are willing to pay. Mm-hmm. You bring in this e-levy of which the people are not willing to pay, and then you anticipated that there will be so much generated from this e-levy, and then this is the case whereby you are running to IMF. So my little contribution is that the abolition of the road tolls was too harsh. So we can go back to that one also.
Yeah. So abolishing the road toll came too early without having the empirical or the evidence to justify why the road toll should have been abolished.
All right, so my name is Shadrach Kofi Ofori. I want to hammer on the financial irregularities. I think per the report I'm having here, which is the Auditor's General Report 2020, I mean, the procurement irregularities increased from 6 million to 846 million. So I think the government should also try and check the financial, the procurement irregularities, as well as the payroll irregularities, which also increased from 2 million to 9 million in 2020. All right, thank you.
Thank you. I think we're moving to the very last, okay, the last two. So let's have you. Okay, let's have you first.
Yeah, mine is a question to the gentleman on the far left. Yeah, concerning the IMF negotiations, you said you don't want the education to be touched on. And I don't understand, because when you look at all the policies that MPP have implemented since they came into power, the free SHS is the one policy that has drained the coffers of the country. And I feel that it was a good policy, but it was too early to implement a policy like this. For the economy that Ghana has, you needed to start with jobs. But then you started with education, making education free, which is very expensive. So I don't see why you should ask the negotiation parties not to touch on the education. I think it should be abolished, and I don't understand why you are saying it shouldn't be touched on.
Yeah, we'd like to respond briefly, not more than 1 minute, because we're running out of time.
I understand your concerns. I did mention that it should be modified in some form. As it stands now, we can't go back in time and say, let's get jobs before doing education. In as much as it has drained the public purse, it has been beneficial to a lot of people. So let's try and win-win. Let's reduce the generation on the public purse and still make sure that we can benefit as much people as possible. That we are on a faster track to development. We are not going to sacrifice one for the other.
Thank you. The last question, then we will come to the panelists.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Joshua Nkrumah, a final year student reading economics and insurance. My point is somehow aligned with the last person. And with my point, then free SHS, I think government should review the free SHS because it swallows chunk of government expenditure. Because the free SHS covers teachers, feeding grants and everything. So if they review that policy, they can take out some part of it so that it will not drink much of the expenditure part of government's things. And again, with our economy being import-driven, what does the production part of our economy account to? Because I know there are policies like planting for food and job and other things. So what does that policy account to our economy? How do we generate like funds and things from that part of the economy? So that's my concern.
Okay, so I think it's a question that we all need to think through it and then prefer answers, and then we will find solutions to it. Okay, so before we leave out, I will ask our panelists one last question. And the question is justice. In the next 20, 30 years, how do you see Ghana? And do you have any hope? Is Ghana better, Ghana worse, or will Ghana be the same? Yeah. You have 1 minute to do that.
1 minute. Okay, I believe that if we continue on the current trajectory we are on, 20 to 30 years from now, we'll be worse off than we are right now. Why am I saying this? From independence, we've been in a cycle. Things are good, then things become bad. Things become so bad that we go to the IMF. They give us a program. Things become better again. Then the cycle continues. We are a 65-year-old country. We are going to the IMF for the 17th time. That means on average, every 3.8 years, we are going back to the IMF. We have to break the cycle. We need a plan as a country, a plan on what we want to do, where we are going to go as a country, a plan that everybody understands and is committed to. I know that, there are 5, 10, 30-year development plans, but how many of you here even know what those plans entail? Not a lot of us. You see, we need a plan that everybody understands, that everybody is committed to. We have potential, but we have to unleash it. We have to do better as a country.
Yeah, so if we keep doing the same thing, we'll come back to the same results. Rabna, the view. Is Ghana better, worse, or same?
I expect a Ghana which has good institutions, because good and strong institutions that are operated by technocrats who have high integrity make a strong nation. Currently, our institutions are influenced by the government and political parties. So in the next 20 to 30 years, I expect a Ghana that has institutions that is free from government interruption.
So Ghana that is free from government and state influence for political reasons. Ebenezer, will Ghana be better, worse, or for same 20, 30 years from today?
You know, Doc, when you ask this question, and everyone is laughing because I think the answer is obvious. But I remember when
obvious meaning?
But, I remember when I was in JHS, this question was asked, the Ghana I live to see, what do you expect to see Ghana in some years? And my answer was, I want to see a Ghana where we don't use ambulance to carry the dead body to the hospital, but rather sick people to the hospital. But I think at this moment, I have changed my mind. The Ghana I live to see is a Ghana where the leaders would have a strategic plan about what they expect from they want to make the country. When I mean a strategic plan, maybe a 10-year plan or a 20-year plan, where when every leader comes, whether MPP or NDC or whatever political party comes into power, that is what.
So a Ghana that has a strategic plan, and a Ghana that is better than the Ghana that we have today.
Exactly.
I think that the question is whether it's going to be better or
worse. Same or worse.
With the present conditions, it's going to be worse.
But why?
Let me start from Kufuor.
Yeah.
We started Kufuor's government.
You have 1 minute to do that.
Right?
Yeah.
We moved him, then NDC came. Then the things that Kufuor was doing that we thought was bad at the time, right? Yeah. NDC came, did worse things. Okay. We took them out. Yeah. NDP came, and they are doing worse things.
Yeah.
Look, the basic thing about our structure is about the Constitution.
Okay.
The Constitution is the framework which gives the power, the mandates, how resources are allocated.
Exactly.
So if there's a problem with the Constitution, all sectors of the economy would not work well. And Obama told us we need strong institutions. Where do institutions derive their power from? From the Constitution. So if you want a better Ghana, it is the Constitution. let's put effort in making sure that those reforms suggested under our Atta Mills, the late Atta Mills, President Atta Mills, are implemented. 2 governments have come, successive governments have come, none of them seem to look at it. And these are the things that when we apply our minds to, it will help us. Look, let's stop this MPP and this thing. If you are building a country, let's look at our constitution and then shape it as we move on, or else the constitution has outlived its benefits, and then we are not going anywhere if we don't tackle that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It has been very, very interesting. Coming to you, let's change the constitution, let's build strong institution, and let's all be committed in building the Ghana that we want. I'll hand over to Charles to pick over.
Thank you very much, audience. I think you could do better. It was an interactive town hall. For once, I thought I was in your classroom. Thank you very much, Dr. Amoah. And thank you very much to our listeners and viewers on Joy News, on Joy FM, across our social media handles. It has been a very, very interesting and intriguing conversation with our students here. And we shall be having more of this subsequently. But in the meantime, for me, Charles Aite, and the rest of the production team, together with our lovely students and our, very much intelligent audience, the guests, the panelists, we say thank you very much once again for being a part of this, and we hope to see you once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And stimulating conversation indeed. That's the Maiden Joy Business Town Hall meeting. Look out for the next edition. It will be probably near you. My name is Darokwa. Up next, The Pulse with Blaise Suga. Don't go anywhere.